Welcome back to my educational channel on biology. In this video, we are going to discuss growth curves, which is subtopic 1.3 in the Form 5 Biology KSSM syllabus. Look at learning standards. Firstly, after this lesson, we should be able to describe types of plants based on their life cycles. So there are three types of plants based on their life cycles, and these are the annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants. Next, we are going to analyze the growth curves of the annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants, and be able to explain the graph or the growth curve. So here's an overview of what we're going to study today. Title is growth curves, and we are first going to discuss what are the types of plants based on the plant's life cycle, right? So there are actually three types of plants. The annual plants, which complete their life cycle in one season of growth in 1 year. So the life cycle only takes 1 year. Okay, and in one season of growth, there is a germination of the seed, then there is the growth of the plant, and then there is the production of flowers, and reproduction occurs. After that, the plant dies. Now, the second type of plant are called biennial plants. So you notice the word biennial. A bi here means two, right? Annual here, n means one. So biennial means two. So these plants complete their life cycle in 2 seasons of growth, and usually it's in 2 years. So by 2 years, their life cycle is over and they die, and that's the end of their life, right? Now, for the third type of plant, they're called perennial plants. So these plants have a longer lifespan because they complete their life cycle in more than 2 years. Some, like the woody trees, can live for a long time, many years. So first, let's discuss the types of plants based on life cycles. So based on their life cycles, plants can be classified into 3 types: annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants. We'll start with the annual plants. So annual plants are plants that have only one life cycle for 1 season or 1 year. So they complete their life cycle in 1 season of growth in 1 year. So very short lifespan. These plants usually die after completing their biological cycle of germination of seed, then growth of the plant body, production of leaves and all that, and stem, growth of stem. After that, there is the flowering part or season, and after they flower, they produce seeds, fruits and seeds, and then there may be reproduction. After that, they will die completely. All right, but the seeds can grow, and then the next generation will grow. So the life cycle or growth cycle or biological cycle starts from germination and ends with the flowering and production of seeds. Now, examples of annual plants are the paddy plant, pumpkin, and watermelon plant, and also the pea plant. So when you think of annual plants, think of pea. All the peas are paddy plant, pumpkin plant, pea plant. And when you think of pumpkin, you think of another round fruit, that is the watermelon. That is a crawling plant on the ground. So now let's look at the life cycle of the annual plant. We'll take the example of pea plant. So the pea plant is a herbaceous annual plant. All right, within 1 year, it will complete its life cycle and die. But the seeds can be planted to grow more pea plants in the next year. Okay, so it starts with the seed, and the seed germinates, then the green leaves start to form, and then the plant grows. Okay, so there's growth of plant, and then when it has matured to a certain extent, when it's a big plant, then it starts to flower and produce seeds. If there's fertilization in the flower, then the fruit is produced and the seeds are produced. And then the plant dies completely. All right? So that is the life cycle of an annual plant. Okay? So an annual plant is a plant that completes its life cycle from germination of the seed to the production of seeds in one growing season, and then it dies. Now, the length of the growing season and the period in which they take place, the length of this season of growth, how long does it last? It is different according to the geographical location, and it may not correspond to the 4 traditional seasons of the year, like summer, spring, summer, autumn, winter. But within 1 year, the life cycle will be completed, right? Next, let's go on to biennial plants. So biennial plants refer to plants which take 2 years with 2 seasons of growth to complete their life cycle. Okay, so what do you mean by 2 seasons of growth? Now see, in the first growth season, this is where vegetative growth occurs. That is the growth of the parts of the plant, like the roots will grow deeper down to the soil. More leaves are produced, and the stem will grow taller and taller. Okay, so after the vegetative growth, the plants will stop the growth process during winter. So they sort of lie dormant. That means they're not active, all right, in winter, because the temperature is too low and there's too little sunlight. But in the next year, the second growth season occurs, which is reproduction. So during the next year, the spring and summer seasons, growth continues. That means there's still some vegetative growth. And then as preparation for reproduction, okay, to produce the seeds and also the baby plants, flowering will occur. So the plants produce the flowers in the second growth season, and then the flowers may develop into fruits if there's fertilization, and seeds are produced, and then the plant dies. Okay, so most biennial plants are found or grow in the temperate regions where there are the 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, winter. Now examples of biennial plants are the cabbage, carrot, silver, coxcomb. So think of C's when you discuss biennial plants. Okay, the examples are cabbage, carrot, and coxcomb. B and then C and BC. So biennial plants have these plants. Examples of biennial plants are cabbage, carrot, and coxcomb. Now let's look at the growth cycle, right? First we start with the seed, then the plant grows. But during the winter season, it will lie dormant. That means not active. It doesn't grow. Then comes spring and summer again the next year. It will continue its vegetative growth, and it will also flower and produce seeds. But then it dies. So it doesn't continue on from there. After 2 years, it will die. So the first year is the growth of the plant from seed to a new green plant. After that, it remains inactive at the end of the first year, probably in winter. And then the next year, it continues to grow, and then it will flower and produce seeds. Then it will die. All right. So the next generation will carry on. The seeds can be planted, and the whole cycle repeats itself. So biennial plants live for 2 years. Perennial plants. Perennial plants refer to plants which live for more than 2 years. So these plants have longer lifespan than the other 2 types of plants, than the annual plants and biennial plants. The perennial plants can be classified into 2 types. Woody perennial plants are like the woody trees and the shrubs. These plants can live for many, many years, right? Herbaceous perennial plants are also plants that can live for more than 2 years, but they are the non-woody, smaller type of plants. So most of these plants are able to flower and bear fruits many, many times throughout their lifetimes. And they have structures that are adaptable to the surroundings and climate change. So examples of these perennial plants are the grass. Even grass can be a perennial plant. It dies, it seems to die, but actually it has some underground storage organs or underground stems. And then the next year it will grow again. And the next year it will continue to grow. Okay, so grass is a perennial plant. Hibiscus plant and mango plant, mango tree, right? So all those fruit trees like durian tree, rambutan trees, these are all perennial plants. So here's a hibiscus plant. It's like a shrub, okay? So I have a hibiscus plant in my school compound that keeps growing year by year, all right? And it doesn't die at all. It hasn't died so far. Now let's look at the life cycle of perennial plants. So first, the seed germinates, and then the plant starts to grow. Okay, so the plant will keep growing, and then it will flower and bear fruits, and in the fruits there will be the seeds. All right, but the plant does not die. It may remain dormant over the winter season, but come summer or spring or summer in the countries with 4 seasons, then it will just continue to grow and grow bigger and bigger. So if it's at this stage already, after the winter, it will grow even bigger than this stage. Okay, it won't reduce size again. It will grow bigger than this stage and just keep growing taller and taller and taller. Right? So it can last for many years. It can grow for many, many years if it is not killed by disease or forest fires, or it's not chopped down. All right. So think of the tall woody plants, the trees in the forest, like chengal, meranti, and other forest trees, and also fruit trees like durian tree, mango tree, and so forth. Okay, they can keep growing and growing for many, many years and repeat the growth of itself. So it will not die after it flowers and bear seeds, unlike the biennial plants or the annual plants. So it will live for more than 2 years. Some can live up to 50 years, 60 years. It depends on whether they are struck by disease or fires or cut down and so forth. So we've already discussed the 3 types of plants based on their life cycles. And these are the annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants. Now, how are the growth curves like? What is the pattern of their growth curves? So for the annual plants that live for 1 year, the growth curve will consist of one sigmoid curve, one curve that is S-shaped. For biennial plants that live for 2 years, their growth curves consist of 2 sigmoid curves, one sigmoid curve for each year. Now, let's go on to perennial plants. For perennial plants that live for more than 2 years, they will have more than 2 sigmoid curves, according to the number of years that they have lived. If they have lived 4 years, they will have 4 sigmoid curves, as shown here. Let's find out more about and try to explain what happens in each phase of the growth curve. Now, in Form 4, you've already learned about the growth curve of humans and animals with exoskeleton. So animals with exoskeleton have a hard outer shell or cover, right? It's the exoskeleton. Now, the growth curves of most plants have the shape of a sigmoid curve, a curve that looks like an S, S-shaped curve. What is the shape of the growth curve of plants? So now we're going to talk about plants. Previously, we talked about animals, discussed about growth curves of animals. Now, growth curve of annual plants. Start with the annual plants that live for 1 year. The growth curve is just one sigmoid curve, as shown here, one S-shaped curve. So you have to be able to describe and explain what happens at each phase in the growth curve of annual plants. Start with A. So A is the phase from 0 to about less than a week. Okay, so in this phase, the seed starts to germinate. Okay, so when the seed germinates, it has to grow the root. Okay, looking at the picture here, it has to grow the root and the shoot. So as it's growing its root here, the food stored in the cotyledon or endosperm. Now these are all food stores in the seed. Okay, for example, the pea plant has 2 cotyledons that store food, okay, in the form of starch or sugars or proteins. So the food stored in the cotyledons will be used in stage A for germination before the first green leaves emerge or appear to carry out photosynthesis. So at the beginning, the dry mass will decrease. Dry mass is the mass of the plant without the water content, right? Minus the water content. So the dry mass of the seed and seedling will keep decreasing for a short while as the roots grow out and before the new green leaves emerge or appear. Alright, because the food store is being used up. Now, how's the food store being used up? The food store will be used in respiration, oxidized. It will be oxidized to produce energy for the process of germination, for the process of growth of roots and other parts. Okay, so the food store will be used in oxidation through the process of respiration to produce energy for the plant. That's why the weight or the dry mass of the cotyledons and the whole plant decreases. Now, secondly, in stage B, we can see that the dry mass of the plant suddenly increases and then shoots up to a maximum height. So now the dry mass is increasing. What is the reason? Firstly, at this point here, when the dry mass starts to increase and the curve goes up, this is the point where the first green leaves are formed, as you can see here. All right, and photosynthesis begins. Once the plant has green leaves, it can produce its own organic food substances, and it can keep producing new green leaves that carry out photosynthesis. So the rate of growth increases rapidly from this stage onwards. This is because the plant has carried out photosynthesis and produced organic food substances for growth of new leaves, so its dry mass will increase as it can carry out photosynthesis. Now, so it will grow and grow until it becomes a taller plant, and then it reaches maturity, okay, at stage C. So at stage C, there's a constant dry mass. This is denoted by the curve being horizontal, so there is no gradient. That means the rate of growth is 0. Okay, so the gradient of the curve actually is equivalent or is connected to the rate of growth. The steeper the gradient of the curve, the higher the rate of growth. Okay, so if the curve is horizontal, it means that the gradient is 0. It means the rate of growth is 0. Right? Why is this so? The plant has matured at this stage, so it's no longer growing anymore or adding new leaves and growing higher up. Okay, it has matured. It's an annual plant and it has matured, so it will start to flower, bear fruits, and so forth. Then in stage D, the dry mass decreases. How does the dry mass decrease? Now, it happens slowly because the plant starts to age, to grow older, and its rate of photosynthesis also decreases. So there's shedding of leaves, meaning the leaves will just drop and then drop to the ground, and the fruits are dispersed. The fruits are scattered to other places. So slowly the plant dies as it drops its leaves. So that's stage D, where the growth rate is negative. The rate of growth is negative because the gradient is already a negative gradient. Okay, growth rate becomes negative. So this is the growth curve of an annual plant. Now let's talk about the growth curve of biennial plants. So the growth curve has two sigmoid curves. All right, and in the first growth season, in the first year, the plants produce leaves and photosynthesis occurs here, right? But the germination phase is the same like for annual plants. Curve will go downwards first and then up. But in this first year, there's no flowering of the plant yet. The plant doesn't produce flowers, it just produce new leaves and grows bigger and bigger, taller and taller. Okay? And if it has excess food, it's stored in the tubers or underground stems and maybe underground roots and so forth. Next, in the second growth season, the next year, maybe after winter, it has remained dormant. Then the next, after that, it will continue to grow again. So the food stored is used to produce the flowers and the seeds. Okay, and then after the reproductive phase, it will die. After the second year is over, it will die. So the growth curve of a biennial plant consists of two sigmoid curves, one for each year. And in the first year, there is growth of the plant, the leaves will grow, and there's vegetative growth. But in the second year, there's the flowering of the plant and reproduction of the plant. Next, we come to the final one, the growth curve of perennial plants. So perennial plants live for more than 2 years. The growth curve is a series of small sigmoid curves depending on the age of the plant. If the plant is 10 years old, it will have 10 sigmoid curves. Okay, so the growth curve for each year is a sigmoid curve as shown here. All right, now if we enlarge this, let every sigmoid curve represent 1 year of growth, right? First year, second year, third year, fourth year. So if it's until here, then this tree is 4 years old. Of course, this the beginning of the sigmoid curve should start at 0 point. Right, now the growth curve for each year is a sigmoid curve. This 1 year, the green one is 1 year, the sigmoid curve, yellow sigmoid curve is another year. So growth occurs throughout the lifespan of the plant. So the plant is continually growing unless it is killed by disease or forest fires or it is chopped down. So the rate of growth is high during spring and summer. So you have a steep curve here, okay, at the beginning of the curve. But the rate of growth, okay, the rate of growth is high in spring and summer because of high light intensity, okay, that is present during the spring and summer. So that will increase the rate of photosynthesis. And the climate is also warmer at that time, higher temperatures and more water available. But when winter comes, then the rate of growth decreases because of low light intensity and low temperatures during winter. All right, some plants just remain dormant, they don't grow much already in winter. So plant growth slows down, and that's why we get almost a horizontal line at the end of the sigmoid curve for perennial plants. Okay, now let's go on to some exercises. So the conclusion from here is that the growth curve for perennial plants consists of a series of small sigmoid curves, and the growth curve for each year is a sigmoid curve, is one sigmoid curve. All right, let's look at the formative exercise 1.3. State the classification of plants based on their lifespan. So plants can be classified as annual plants, biennial plants, and perennial plants, okay, based on their lifespan. Now, based on your knowledge of biology, specify the types of plants that are able to survive in extreme conditions or surroundings. Specify the type of plant, whether it's a annual, biennial, or perennial plant. Which one will survive, will be able to survive better in extreme surroundings, okay, where the temperature may be colder, or where the temperature may be lower or much higher, where there's a lack of water, and so forth. Extreme surroundings. So the answer is perennial plants are the ones that can survive better in these extreme surroundings, like in the desert, okay, or in the Arctic regions. So these plants have structures that are adaptable to their surroundings and to temperature change. So that's why they can survive in extreme surroundings. We'll be talking about perennial plants that live in different conditions later on, okay, in chapter 7, I think, okay, the adaptations of plants in different habitats, and most of them are perennial plants. Okay, continue. So discuss some more about this. So most of these perennial plants are able to flower and fruit many times throughout their lives, right, because they live for a long time. So this will increase their chances of survival for the species. Okay, so perennial plants are the ones that are better able to survive in extreme surroundings or conditions compared to annual and biennial plants. Now, lastly, in general, the growth curves of the three types of plants are a single sigmoid curve or a combination of a few sigmoid curves. Why does the growth curve of perennial plant consist of a series of small sigmoid curves? So first we have to explain the meaning of the word sigmoid curve. Why is the growth shaped like a sigmoid curve? The growth curve is shaped like a sigmoid curve, and then why a series? So the growth curve of perennial plants is a series of small sigmoid curves because one sigmoid curve represents 1 year of growth, okay, and to discuss or explain the shape, the S shape structure, we can mention that the growth curve is influenced by seasons. So during the summer, the growth rate is higher, and then we get the steep part of the curve. Okay, and that's because during the summer there are higher temperatures, more water, and higher light intensity during summer and spring and summer. But during winter, the rate of growth is lower. All right, so that causes the end part of the sigmoid curve, which is where the gradient is horizontal, where the growth rate is 0 or nearly 0. Okay, and the gradient is very low, almost 0. All right, so this is to explain the S-shaped structure of the growth curve for the perennial plant. Right, that's all for this lesson. Thanks for viewing, and please let me know if there are any topics that you would like to discuss in the future. Just write it down in the comment section, and I will try my best to prepare the slides and the teaching for that particular topic for you. All right, so you can be assured that the teaching and the explanations will be very clear to you, and you'll likely be able to understand, okay, the videos that are being taught, or teaching videos that are being explained. So do send me your comments and which topics you would like to have explained, okay, whether it's Form 4 topics or even the current Form 5 topics. So thanks for viewing, and do share, like, and subscribe to my channel. So take care and goodbye for now.